a disclaimer, this video was recorded when I was 29. By the time it airs, I will be 30. Hi there and welcome to another video. Welcome to my platform. The name is Gorata.Selaledi. I'm so excited to be here today on a beautiful Friday. I hope you had an amazing week. In today's Faith Friday video, we are going to be reflecting on Genesis 4. I made an underestimation thinking that I would take 1,819 days to complete my Bible, but because I am doing a chapter every week, that means we are going to be here for over 1,000 weeks, and that's a lot of time. That's probably till I'm like in my 90s. So here's to being that cool old lady on the tubes of you in my 80s recording and doing Bible study until we get to Revelation 32. How have you been? Just as a quick check-in, by the time this video goes live, I will be 30 and so excited to, I believe, be stepping into a new age and believing for so much in terms of what God is looking to do in my life. So excited to see what comes out of this vessel called Gorata.Selaledi, and still in the same rhythm of the series that I started a week ago, being anointed for more. I believe that even as we reflect on Genesis 4, it will be a blessing not only for myself but for you as well, to really tap into that anointing in terms of that little piece of glory that God wants to bring into the world through your life. So let's get into the word. So if you pay attention, today we have Jack and Jill over there at the back. But coming into this video, actually having to go look for my notes after this clip, but I am just going to record the reading of the word, and I hope that even as I read, you will whip out and pull out your own Bible and read the word for yourself. And if you do notice that I don't have my mic with me, it's still charging. It actually died in one of the recordings that I did and had to just go back to basics, and I guess it's nice to be here. But let's get into the word. For real though. Genesis 4. Reading in your hearing, there's 26 verses in the chapter. And Genesis is the first book of the Bible, and so far we've done Genesis 1, 2, and 3. If you've missed them, you can check them out and have a chance to kind of just reflect for yourself what those 3 verses want to land in your own life, given time and season. So I am going to read in your hearing. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had no respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. It's getting a bit windy. I'm just going to pause this video so that I close the window. You guys want to come say hi to the people? Come Layla. I got a new dog. Come say hi to the people. Say hi. Did you fart? Say hi guys, my name is Milo. Promise you is a different dog. Come Bush. Okay, let me just turn my camera so that you see them. Say hi guys. Hi. Okay. Alright, so going right back into the word. My battery is quite low, so I am going to just be to the point, right? And maximize the time time that we have together. So just to continue, I found my notes, by the way. Guys, I'm just gonna pause and take these guys out because look, he's looking for attention. Milo, love bombing. Take 7. Alright, so where were we? I think the last word I read was wrath, spelled W-R-O-T-H. Alright, so it says, and Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, why art thou wroth, and why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou does not if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. And Cain talked to Abel his brother. And it came to pass when they were in the field that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and slew him. And the Lord said unto Cain, where is Abel thy brother? There's God again with the questions, eh? And he said, I know not, am I my brother's keeper? And he said, what hast thou done? The voice of thy brother's blood crieth unto me from the ground, and from art thou cursed from the earth, which hath opened her mouth to receive thy brother's blood from thy hand. When thou tillest the ground, it shall not henceforth yield unto thee her strength. A fugitive and a vagabond shall thou be in the earth. And Cain said unto the Lord, my punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, thou hast driven me out this day from the face of the earth, and from thy face shall I be hid. And I shall be a fugitive and a vagabond in the earth, and it shall come to pass that everyone that findeth me shall slay me. And the Lord said unto him, therefore whosoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. And when Cain went out of the presence of the Lord, and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. And he builded a city, and called the name of the city after his son Enoch. And unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehujael, and Mehujael begat Methusael, and Methusael begat Lamech. And Lamech took unto him 2 wives. The names of one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. And Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such that dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal, and he was the father of all such as handle the harp and organ. And Zillah she also bare Tubal Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, a young man to my hurt. If Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. And Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God said she, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and his name was Enos. Then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. And that concludes the reading of the word. So every time I read or hear of the story of Lamech and his wives, like if you look at Genesis 4, we're being told the story of Cain and Abel, and then there's just these 5 verses where we learn about Lamech and his wives. And the thought that I caught as I was reading that, I was like, wait a minute. And this is something, a revelation that I never had reading or listening to Genesis, right? And the realization is, after Lamech killed this person, God didn't show up on the scene to ask him, what have you done? And it's so scary, because then it shows that after Cain's sin, in this case, God was grieved or wasn't as close anymore. And you see how the consequence of what God had done in terms of Cain to say him being covered or being avenged, he kind of put it on himself, but I don't think it works that way. Anyways, let's get into reflecting on the key lessons that I took in terms of my notes for Genesis 4. It's not a lot actually, but I hope that even as you reflect on Genesis 4, you will get to a place where even the questions that God is asking Cain in this instance, and also just the statements that are coming out of Genesis 4 that I will share, you will be able to sit down and reflect to really ask yourself what it means. And the statement that stands out, even as I say that, is the statement where God is saying to Cain, I'm just going to read it, that's verse 7. It says, if you doest well, shall thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him. Right? And then also the statement that stood out as well, that Cain said to God to then say, am I my brother's keeper? Right? And in God asking Cain just to say, where's your brother? I think the responsibility of having to take care of each other, the responsibility of being there not only for ourselves, but being there for each and every person who is connected to us, right? But let's get into, I guess, the 3 points of reflection from Genesis 4. So there's currently a power cut. I'm not sure if I said that in the previous clip, but I am at 12%. It'll flip 12%. Anyways, just to jump into the 3 points and to allow for us to actually be in good time in terms of saving the battery. But my prayer is that the power comes back in time so that I can actually complete editing and saving and uploading all the videos for this week. So let's get into it. So the first point, and remember these notes are like what I did right now. I am by the way I stopped at 6:45. That I do, there's a plan that I'm usually doing all the time, Bible in 90 days or Bible in 60 days. So these are the notes from the last sitting when I did it, right? This is in March of this year. Genesis 4, what I noted here is that God respected Abel's offering. I think what I'd noted down here is something that, I can't, my bad, it's a 10%. Yeah, so what I noted down here is how I was feeling on the day I read this, and I noted down feelings of isolation and a situation that had transpired on that particular month, right? And I asked the question, have I been wroth? Similar to what happened when Cain's sacrifice was not respected, but Abel's, right? And I think the question, now reflecting on just that question to myself at the time, is then to say, how was my heart posture in that moment concerning what happened? How was my heart posture towards the people that were in that situation? How is my heart posture in terms of trying to understand what God would want me to have had in terms of, to have had done in terms of showing up in that moment, right? So I think maybe just to pause on that reflection to then say, when you look at that moment, I think in Hebrews it talks about Abel's faith in this moment, to then say ultimately in the action or in the story that we're being told, it wasn't really particularly about the sacrifice itself. And when you look at Cain, he was actually just doing it as routine to say, look, we give sacrifices to this God, let me do and check a box, right? Versus Abel, who actually made it a point to give his first fruits. It says his firstlings, right? And that, I guess, denotes also a bit of intention as well, that when his flock were giving birth, like the goats and the cows, he probably made it an effort that each and every first kid or first, what's a baby cow? Baby cow was set aside and taken care of until the time of sacrifice, right? And it showed, I guess, in terms of his faith as well, to then say, look, ultimately this first one was made possible by this provider being God. And I think just then tying where his source was, or where he understood his source to be, being able to dedicate the first then showed off his faith. And in asking, was I wroth? To then say in that moment, where was my heart? Where was my faith? Was I operating in faith, or was I operating in fear? So in thinking about maybe for yourself in moments where you've been angry, there is a will, there is a way. So I've managed to find an old power bank that I got as a gift, and luckily it was fully charged. So I was able to, I was able to charge my phone. I don't know about this lighting. But yeah, moving on to the second point that I shared. I think I finished off the thought in the previous video talking about anger, and in the context of Cain and Abel, to then say in terms of your heart posture, where is your heart in terms of either faith or fear. And I think just looking at everything that you do in terms of your faith journey or your faith walk. There's Milo in the frame and Bubbles, just let them loose. But yeah, in thinking about how you show up, either showing up at church, showing up at work, showing up in your family, showing up in prayer, are you showing up just from a place of fear or from a place of faith? In this case, that is what we are learning from Cain and Abel's first appearance, where we learn about the sacrifice that they made. A minute. So the second point that I noted down in my notes is God showed mercy to Cain even after such a hard sin that he had committed, right? And I think we usually, I think when I was growing up at least, I would try quantify or put a weighting or rating to the types of sin. And I remember seeing a post that was talking about the sin of idolatry, and talking about how sin looks like this, and it kind of just outlined the usual sins that we know. But then it also talked about idolatry being a sin as well, to say if you idolize money, if you idolize your self-image. This is something that I talked about in my Sunday video. If you haven't watched it, please check it out. And I got up to close that door and it's opening again. But it's fine. I think I meant the door. I said that too loud. But yeah, in terms of, I guess, the levels of sin, to say sin is sin, no matter how big or small, sin is sin. But what we are learning from Genesis 4 is that God shows us mercy, like even where we feel we've actually missed the mark completely. Because I think there's a definition of sin that I heard that talked about missing the mark, sin being missing the mark. Don't mind that, it's the doggies playing. And in now learning about this God of mercy, the charge or the call on us on this Faith Friday video is to run back and run fast to God, especially in times where you catch yourself close to falling into sin or even thinking about the sin, right? And then the last point that I share here is the story of Lamech. And I think the key thought that I had here was about the seed that is mentioned in Genesis 3, where God is saying that you shall bruise its head and it shall bruise your heel. And what I noted down here is to say the story of Lamech showed that the seed was polluted. And what I wrote down is that sin was carried in the blood. And I wrote a question then to say, is that why Christ had to come and die and kill sin through his blood? And that's a closing thought. And there's a phrase that one of my sisters at church said last year that I think I usually even always reflect on and go back on in prayer when it relates to the blood. And the phrase is that the blood can speak. And I think in speaking or thinking about the ability of the blood to speak, the phrase is basically for the blood to speak a better word. And I think in thinking about the different sins, or I guess the different shortfalls that we might have in us being human beings, when Christ died, he made a provision for all of them. I think I look back now and I would say to 18-year-old Gorata to say, stop being hard on yourself. You don't have to save yourself, I think in essence. Because I think for the most part, trying to be perfect actually makes it seem as though you're now trying to be the one dying on the cross and taking up the sin. But Christ died so that you don't have to do the heavy lifting in this case. And the blood in this case, I think, has made the ultimate sacrifice for ourselves. And in Genesis 4, I think, just closing from the story of Cain and Abel, from the story of Lamech, from the story of, I think, that last bit in Genesis 4 where it talks about and men started, let me just read it as is. Yes, and yeah, it's here, yeah. And then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. I had that highlighted as well, because I think now what we're seeing is just the transformation from how it was between Adam and Eve to now Cain and Abel to now Lamech, and to say that the generations that came after Cain, I guess, then had a stain, if I was to put it as such, that they'd lost out in the intimacy, because the last moment where we see God actually engaging with them directly is with Cain, and after this big moment where he kills off his brother. But then the cost in this case is that men now were kind of separated, and I believe that that's what sin does. And even for yourself, in thinking about either choosing to do the right thing or the sinful thing, it's then to say, how does your decision ultimately then affect your intimacy with God? Does it increase the gap or pull you closer in terms of proximity? And I think what I see here is that ultimately the sin created a separation. And the Bible story is amazing, because I think ultimately when Christ comes into the scene, he comes to close the gap, tear the veil, and we will learn about the veil when we learn about, I think that should be in Deuteronomy and Exodus, when we learn about the temple where God said he wants to sit and abide with the people. But thank you so much for tuning into this video today. I'm not so sure about the lighting. I don't know if it's the lighting or the lighting on my phone, but I hope that it will work. I don't know why my boy is barking. That's Bailey. I have 3 dogs now. Scary! But thank you so much for tuning into this video and watching to the very end. See you next Friday when we reflect on Genesis 5 as we continue on our Bible journey. The hope is to read the whole Bible before I take my last breath, but ultimately getting to a place where we unpack and reflect on what God is trying to pull us to in terms of intimacy and love and making a dent in the grand scheme of eternity and the kingdom of God. Thank you so much once again. This is me rambling to a finish, but otherwise I hope that may God's favor locate you and may His grace sustain you as you get into this weekend. See you next Friday. It's goodbye from me. I did check after this, it was the lighting on my phone, so happy. But otherwise, thanks for watching. Bye again.